Sean O'Malley is looking at his upcoming fight against Song Yadong at UFC 324 as the definitive start of the second chapter of his career. After two consecutive losses to the relentless Merab Dvalishvili derailed his championship run, O'Malley is adamant that the champion's mindset never left him. He stated his goal is crystal clear: go in, put on a clinic against a dangerous opponent in Song Yadong, and use that performance to catapult himself right back into the title picture. For O'Malley, the only thing that's changed is the fight length. It's back to a 3-round main event instead of a 5-round title fight. The stakes for this return couldn't be higher. Song Yadong is a formidable striker with serious knockout power, making him a perilous test for anyone, especially someone coming off a loss. A defeat here would be catastrophic for O'Malley's plans, likely pushing him far down the contenders ladder. However, a decisive and impressive victory, particularly a highlight reel finish, immediately restores his status as a top-tier attraction and makes his call for a title shot impossible to ignore. The most compelling and logical destination for O'Malley, should he win, is a blockbuster rematch with the new bantamweight champion, Petr Yan. Their first fight in 2022 was a razor-close split decision that went O'Malley's way, a result debated by fans and analysts to this day. A second fight isn't just a title eliminator, it's a massive legacy fight to settle the score, loaded with built-in story and fan interest. This is exactly the kind of high-profile, championship-level matchup that the UFC would want to feature on a landmark event like the historic White House card planned for June 2026. Of course, the path is never simple. Even if O'Malley navigates past Song Yadong and then past Petr Yan, the ghost of Merab Dvalishvili, the man who beat him twice, would still be waiting in the wings for a potential trilogy fight. Furthermore, other elite contenders like Umar Nurmagomedov are also vying for their shot. But for now, O'Malley's entire world is focused on Song Yadong. A win reignites the Suga show and sets the stage for the biggest and most lucrative fights of his career, with a chance to write a spectacular second chapter that ends with him once again holding the belt. Colby Covington is embarking on a mission to reinvent his career and inject his trademark brand of chaos into a new weight class. The polarizing 3-time UFC welterweight title challenger has officially declared his move to the middleweight division, setting his sights not on a tune-up fight, but on an immediate blockbuster against the biggest names the 185-pound division has to offer. In a characteristically provocative interview with Submission Radio, Covington framed his departure from welterweight as both a practical and promotional calculation. "I feel like there's a lot more enticing matchups in the middleweight division right now than there is in the welterweight division," he stated, directly criticizing his former home. "There's just no stars. It's sad that there are no stars in the welterweight division, so I think I'm going to have to go up to middleweight to get some big fights." This move follows a period of relative inactivity after a TKO loss to Joaquin Buckley over a year ago, signaling his intent to chase fresh narratives and bigger paydays. For his divisional debut, Chaos has targeted the pinnacle, calling out two of the most prominent former champions. His primary desire is a grudge match with Israel Adesanya, who is scheduled to return against Joe Pyfer in March. Covington painted the matchup as a clash of iconic brands and personal animosity. "I think someone like Israel Adesanya intrigues me, a former champion like myself, someone that generates hype, has a following, has a platform and a brand," he explained. Then he added the personal fuel that drives his promotions. "It's someone I really don't like. He's talked a lot of shit about me in the past, so let's see if he can actually back that shit talk up." Should the Adesanya fight prove unavailable, Covington named another former king, Sean Strickland, as his ideal alternative. He dismissed Strickland's high-volume, pressure-based style as mere cardio kickboxing and pointed to Dricus du Plessis' victory over him as a template. "I'd beat him everywhere. You see what Dricus did to him. I do the same thing," Covington claimed, framing himself as a superior wrestler who could exploit the same defensive gaps.
Covington's confidence in competing with larger opponents is unwavering. He dismissed the classic size and power advantages of middleweights by emphasizing what he sees as a critical flaw: their speed. "I know I can do well at middleweight. Those guys are a lot slower. They may be bigger, they may hit harder, but they're a lot slower. I'm just as strong as them. I'm putting on a lot of size these days and getting stronger." His strategy would likely rely on leveraging his elite collegiate wrestling pedigree, relentless pace, and underrated striking volume to overwhelm opponents who aren't accustomed to such a frenetic output. The move presents an intriguing challenge for the UFC matchmakers. Granting Covington an immediate shot at a star like Adesanya or Strickland would guarantee massive attention and sellable animosity, bypassing the typical contender process he is often criticized. However, it would also sideline other deserving middleweight contenders who have been grinding in the division. Whether the promotion views Covington as a big enough draw to justify such a shortcut will be the central question.
Just a few months ago, Justin Gaethje's UFC career appeared to be teetering on the brink of an unceremonious end, jeopardized by a heated ultimatum that landed him firmly in Dana White's bad books. Now, with an interim lightweight title shot against Pimblett at UFC 324 just days away, the highlight has opened up about the tense standoff, placing the blame for the controversial retirement threat squarely on the shoulders of his longtime manager, Ali Abdelaziz. The friction stemmed from Gaethje's situation after a short-notice victory over Rafael Fiziev in March 2025. Having stepped in to save the main event, Gaethje felt he had unequivocally earned a title shot. When it didn't materialize, an ultimatum was delivered to the UFC: a championship fight or retirement. This move famously drew the ire of UFC CEO Dana White, who publicly told Gaethje to retire if that was his stance, labeling the gambit as wacky. The incident threatened to derail the career of one of the promotion's most beloved action fighters. In a recent interview with TNT Sports, Gaethje clarified the chain of events, attributing the hardline stance to his manager's advocacy. "Well, I definitely got what I asked for. It was more my manager putting me in that position," Gaethje explained. "I probably said it, but we're emotional beings, you know, and we're petty. You don't get to where I'm at or where these fighters are at without being petty. I take things personally, and I thought I'd earned something, and so I was trying to stand up for myself." His admission reveals the fragile dynamics between fighter, management, and promotion. Gaethje's raw emotion and sense of injustice were channeled by Abdelaziz into a high-risk negotiating tactic, one that ultimately secured the interim title bout against Pimblett, but at the cost of a major public clash with White. As he prepares for what could be the final act of his legendary career, Gaethje is acutely aware of the stakes. The 37-year-old has stated that a knockout loss to Pimblett would likely prompt his retirement. This adds a profound layer of vulnerability to the bout. It's not just a fight for a belt, it's a fight for his fighting life. The journey to UFC 324 has been a roller coaster for Justin Gaethje, from the peak of a Fight of the Year contender to the valley of a public feud with his boss, to the redemption of a title shot born from that very conflict. When he steps into the octagon, he'll be battling not just Pimblett, but the culmination of a career-defining gamble that brought him to this precipice. In a high-stakes bid to halt the most difficult skid of his legendary career, former UFC middleweight champion Israel Adesanya is slated to return. He will headline UFC Seattle on March 28th against the surging and heavy-handed contender Joe Pyfer in a fight that represents a critical crossroads for both men. For Adesanya, the bout is nothing less than a necessity. Once considered nearly untouchable at 185 pounds after winning 23 of his first 24 fights, the last stylebender has endured a stark reversal of fortune. He has lost 4 of his last 5 bouts, including back-to-back knockout losses to Dricus du Plessis and most recently, Nassourdine Imavov in February 2025.
This three-fight losing streak has pushed him to the periphery of the title conversation for the first time since his rise. A victory is essential, not just for momentum, but to reaffirm his place among the elite in a division now ruled by Khamzat Chimaev. Standing across from him will be Joe Pyfer, a fighter engineered to test the very questions surrounding Adesanya. A product of Dana White's Contender Series, Pyfer, 15-3, has rebounded emphatically from a main event loss to Jack Hermansson in early 2024. He rides a three-fight win streak, most recently submitting Abus Magomedov via a brutal face crank at UFC 320. Pyfer embodies the archetype that has recently troubled Adesanya, a powerful, aggressive finisher who will march forward without fear. For Pyfer, this is the ultimate opportunity, a chance to catapult himself into the top 10 and become a superstar by defeating one of the greatest strikers in UFC history on the biggest stage of his life. The stylistic clash is compelling. Adesanya, the masterful, elusive counter-striker, will need to rediscover the pinpoint accuracy and defensive mastery that made him champion. Pyfer will look to cut off the cage, absorb punishment to land his own, and drag the fight into the kind of chaotic firefight where his power can end the night in an instant. The UFC Seattle card gains significant depth with the co-feature, a highly anticipated rematch between top flyweights Macy Barber and former champion Alexa Grasso. This pairing adds a second title eliminator vibe to the night, creating a compelling doubleheader. When Adesanya enters the Climate Pledge Arena, he will be fighting for more than a win. He will be fighting for the legacy of his career's final chapter. A loss would mark a fourth consecutive defeat, a scenario almost unthinkable for him 2 years ago. A win, however, would silence the growing doubts, reinvigorate his narrative, and prove that the last stylebender still has the magic to craft one more run at the top. For Joe Pyfer, it's a chance to author a seismic upset and change the trajectory of the entire division.
Alex Pereira is making the ultimate gamble. By vacating his light heavyweight title to move up to heavyweight, he's trading a secure championship reign for a shot at a legacy that no fighter has ever achieved, becoming the first three-division champion in UFC history. This decisive move cuts through all other noise. It effectively ends the long-running speculation about a super fight with Jon Jones, prioritizing a clear path to the heavyweight belt over a negotiated spectacle. For Pereira, the third title is the unambiguous, historic prize that matters most. His departure will instantly scramble the light heavyweight division, forcing the UFC to book a new title fight between top contenders like Yuri Prochazka and Magomed Ankalaev. Meanwhile, Pereira will enter the land of giants, where his legendary power will be tested against the largest and most dangerous opponents in the sport, potentially for the title immediately. It's a risk of monumental proportions, but for Poatan, the chance to stand alone in history is worth everything. In a move that signals a major career reset, former UFC middleweight title challenger Paulo Costa is officially leaving the 185-pound division behind. He will make his full-time light heavyweight debut in a high-stakes showdown against undefeated contender Azamat Murzakanov at UFC 327 on April 11th in Miami, a bout that instantly positions the winner on the shortlist for championship consideration. This transition to the 205-pound limit has been a long-anticipated necessity for Borrachinha. Throughout his UFC career, Costa has been one of the largest and most physically imposing middleweights, but his dramatic and often concerning weight cuts have been a recurring narrative. His most notorious struggle came in 2021, when he failed to make weight for a headliner against Marvin Vettori, forcing the bout to be contested at a 195-pound catchweight. While he earned an impressive decision victory over Roman Kopylov at UFC 318, the grind of the cut appeared to remain. His recent withdrawal from a scheduled UFC 326 bout against Bruno Ferreira for undisclosed reasons seems to have been the final catalyst for this permanent change.
By moving up, Costa aims to trade the debilitating pre-fight weight cut for full strength and vitality on fight night, hoping to translate his notorious power into an even more devastating force. Awaiting him is perhaps the most dangerous possible welcome party in the division. Azamat Murzakanov, 16-0, known as the Professional, is a silent assassin in the light heavyweight ranks. Currently ranked 6th, the Russian fighter has carved a path of destruction with his sledgehammer left hand, earning knockout victories over established names like Alexander Rakic and Alonzo Menefield. His momentum was temporarily halted by a USADA suspension, but his return has been marked by a clear intention to hunt the biggest names available. A victory over a star of Costa's magnitude would be the definitive statement needed to leapfrog him into a title eliminator. For Murzakanov, this fight is the opportunity to transform from a feared prospect into a certified pay-per-view headliner. The stylistic matchup is a dream for fans of pure, violent striking. Both men are fundamentally offensive fighters who reject backward steps. Costa builds his attack around crushing leg kicks and a relentless, pressure-based boxing assault aimed at the head and body. Murzakanov, conversely, is a more patient counterpuncher with earthquake power in his left hand, expertly timing opponents who wade into his range. The key battle will be whether Costa's forward pressure can overwhelm and break down Murzakanov, or if the Russian can withstand the storm and land his fight-altering counterbomb. It is a classic clash of force versus precision, guaranteed to produce fireworks. For the UFC light heavyweight division, a landscape perennially searching for fresh contenders, this bout is a gift. The winner immediately becomes a compelling figure in the title picture. If Costa wins, he instantly becomes a marketable, power-focused new threat in the top 10, a fresh storyline for champion Alex Pereira or the next in line. If Murzakanov wins, he validates the hype surrounding his undefeated record and forces the UFC to consider him for a championship opportunity against the division's elite.
The Professional Fighters League is making a major statement with its 2026 matchmaking, and nowhere is that clearer than in the promotional debut of its newest high-profile signing. Bryan Battle, the former Ultimate Fighter winner and UFC standout, will be thrown directly into the deep end, facing former undefeated champion Johnny Eblen in the main event of PFL Pittsburgh on March 28th. This matchup is a masterstroke by the PFL, delivering exactly the kind of high-stakes, talent versus talent fight that can define a promotion. For Bryan Battle, 12-2-1, it's a monumental opportunity to prove his worth on a global stage after a disputed split-decision win over Randy Brown at UFC 310. Battle parted ways with the promotion, leaving on a 5-fight unbeaten streak that showcased his dangerous finishing ability. A victory over a fighter of Eblen's caliber wouldn't just win a debut, it would instantly legitimize Battle as a top-tier middleweight and serve as a powerful rebuttal to the UFC's decision to let him go. Standing across from him is perhaps the most formidable test outside the UFC. Johnny Eblen was, until recently, considered one of the best middleweights in the world, reigning as the undefeated Bellator champion before the promotion's absorption into the PFL. His shocking last-minute TKO loss to Costello Van Steenis in July 2025 snapped a perfect 15-0 record and cost him his title. For Eblen, this fight is the crucial first step on a path to redemption. A win over Battle would almost certainly secure him the next shot at the PFL Middleweight Championship, currently held by Van Steenis, who defends against Fabian Edwards on March 20th. It's a chance for Eblen to reclaim his aura of invincibility and re-enter the championship conversation. The PFL Pittsburgh card is further bolstered by a compelling co-main event between former PFL champion Impa Kasangani and perennial contender Dalton Rasta, adding depth to a show designed to showcase the league's post-Bellator merger strength.
For Bryan Battle, the narrative is set. He has been handed the toughest possible welcome gift, a fight against a former king desperate to reclaim his throne. If he can topple Johnny Eblen, he won't just win a fight, he will instantly become the most talked about new face in the PFL and a bona fide title threat. If Eblen wins, he re-establishes himself as the division's boogeyman. Either way, the PFL wins by delivering a must-see main event that pits proven pedigree against hungry emerging talent in a clash with immediate title implications.
The MMA world has received a profoundly welcome and reassuring update regarding the well-being of UFC legend Nick Diaz, offering a stark and hopeful contrast to the alarming and distressing situation that surrounded him just over a year ago. Recent social media posts from Diaz's longtime friend and former training partner Jake Shields show the iconic fighter from Stockton back on the mats, engaging in light, playful sparring and sharing smiles with his old comrade. A little play sparring with Nick Diaz this morning. Nick was my top training partner for over 15 years, so it's good to get back together and train, Shields wrote alongside the video. The footage, showing Diaz moving with familiar agility and apparent joy, has been met with an enormous wave of relief and celebration from a fan base that has been deeply worried about his welfare. This visual evidence marks a critical positive turn in a narrative that took a deeply concerning path in late 2024. Diaz was initially scheduled for a high-profile return against Vicente Luque in December of that year, but the fight was scrapped after a bizarre and unsettling video of him surfaced online, leading to widespread concern about his mental and physical state. The situation grew even darker when allegations emerged from his ex-girlfriend, claiming he had been drugged and taken to Mexico against his will. A cautiously optimistic update from his coach in mid-2025 hinted at improvement, but Shields' video provides the first clear public glimpse of a healthier, happier Diaz re-engaged with the sport and the team that defined his career. The fan reaction has been overwhelmingly supportive and protective. Comments like, "Glad to see the scrap pack back together," "So glad to see Nick healthy," and "I'm so happy to see this," flooded social media, reflecting a collective exhale. However, this joyful sighting has also prompted a renewed and sober discussion about his future. At 42 years old, after a legendary but notoriously punishing career, the overwhelming sentiment from the community is that his long-term health and peace are the only priorities. Remarks such as, "Good to see him healthy with his people around him," and "Hope he's conquering those demons and taking it one step at a time," underscore a widespread desire for this to be a story of personal recovery and camaraderie, not a setup for a potentially dangerous competitive return. For now, the most heartening takeaway is simple and clear. Nick Diaz appears to be back in a safe, familiar, and positive environment, sparking hope that one of the sport's most enduring and beloved figures is finding his footing again.
As the pivotal interim lightweight title fight at UFC 324 approaches, Paddy Pimblett is constructing his core strategy around a singular, self-aware thesis. His perceived advantage lies not in conventional technical superiority, but in the sheer, unnerving unpredictability of his fighting style. In facing the vastly more experienced and battle-tested Justin Gaethje, Pimblett is leaning heavily into his identity as an unorthodox weirdo, claiming that his awkwardness creates a preparation nightmare that Gaethje's camp cannot adequately replicate. "I don't wrestle like a normal person. I do everything differently. I'm not normal," Pimblett asserted. He argues that his unique, almost instinctual approach to grappling and striking makes him a stylistic anomaly, stating, "He's not going to be able to get a sparring partner in that grapples like me or strikes like me, because I'm so awkward." This philosophy of chaotic individuality is Pimblett's proposed counter to Gaethje's formidable resume. While the highlight has shared the octagon with legends like Khabib Nurmagomedov, Dustin Poirier, and Max Holloway, Pimblett contends that none of those fighters resemble his own erratic movement, untelegraphed takedown attempts, and scrambling style. He previously made a similar claim about striking, suggesting his training partner Luke Riley hits harder and better than Gaethje. Now he extends that to all phases, framing his weirdness as an intangible, unpreppable weapon that can destabilize even the most seasoned veterans. However, this narrative clashes with the statistical and historical record. Gaethje's defensive fundamentals, particularly his wrestling, are vastly underrated. A decorated collegiate wrestler, Gaethje has been taken down only 6 times in 14 UFC bouts, a remarkable rate of takedown defense against elite competition. Pimblett, in just half the number of UFC fights, has been taken down 11 times. Furthermore, the only 2 men to ever submit Gaethje are arguably the 2 greatest lightweight grapplers of the modern era, Khabib Nurmagomedov and Charles Oliveira. This suggests that while Pimblett's style may be unpredictable, Gaethje's foundational skills have proven resistant to all but the most transcendent grappling forces in the sport's history. The bout, therefore, becomes a compelling clash of philosophies. Pimblett is betting that his organic, chaotic creativity can create openings that Gaethje's technically sound but more traditional opponents could not. Gaethje, training with contender Fares Ziam to simulate Pimblett's look, will aim to prove that high-level technique, composure, and fight-changing power are universal solvents capable of breaking down any stylistic oddity. Pimblett's weirdo advantage is a psychological and strategic gambit, but its efficacy will be tested against the cold, hard reality of Gaethje's proven ability to defend, counter, and terminate fights with ruthless efficiency.
The MMA world is buzzing with speculation after UFC CEO Dana White teased a mysterious special announcement promising to deliver the news via an Instagram live session on Tuesday, January 13th. The promotion's social media post, captioned "Dana Announcement Incoming," has successfully ignited a firestorm of fan theories, as the timing makes the subject particularly enigmatic. With the first blockbuster of 2026, UFC 324, featuring the interim lightweight title fight between Justin Gaethje and Paddy Pimblett, and the champion versus GOAT co-main of Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunes, already fully booked for January 24th, and the historic White House event still approximately 5 months away, White's reveal is unlikely to be a straightforward fight booking for the immediate schedule. Given the UFC's current pivotal juncture, the most plausible focus for the announcement is the operational details of its historic new era. The promotion has just executed a monumental shift, concluding its long-term partnership with ESPN and embarking on a groundbreaking $7.7 billion exclusive broadcasting deal with Paramount+. This transition represents the most significant structural change in the company in over a decade. White's announcement could serve as the formal unveiling of new programming formats, subscription model specifics, or exclusive behind-the-scenes content initiatives tailored for Paramount+. It may also detail how international viewers will access events, or announce new studio shows and digital programming designed to anchor the UFC's presence on its new streaming home, effectively mapping out the fan experience for 2026 and beyond. Other possibilities, while less certain, remain intriguing. The announcement could involve a major strategic partnership outside of broadcasting, a significant update on the recently launched Zuffa boxing venture, or perhaps a landmark contract extension for a superstar fighter. With the MMA audience experiencing a natural lull, the last UFC event was a month ago, and the next is still over 10 days out. The timing is strategically perfect for White to command the news cycle and inject a fresh jolt of excitement into the nascent year.
By leveraging the direct, personal touch of Instagram Live, he has transformed a simple business update into a captive event, ensuring that whatever the news may be, whether it's a broadcasting blueprint, a surprise signing, or an entirely unforeseen project, it will have the full and immediate attention of the entire combat sports community. The long-rumored bantamweight clash has been finalized, adding a significant jolt of star power to the UFC's return to Mexico City. Marlon "Cheeto" Vera is officially set to face the surging David Martinez at UFC Mexico on February 28th, a matchup that immediately becomes one of the most compelling attractions on the card, headlined by former flyweight champion Brandon Moreno. This fight represents a classic crossroads battle, with high stakes for both men. For Vera, the perennial contender and former title challenger, it is a critical opportunity to reassert himself in the top tier of the 135-pound division. Following his championship loss to Sean O'Malley and a subsequent defeat to Merab Dvalishvili, Cheeto needs a statement victory to halt his slide and remind the division of his trademark durability and fight-ending power. A win in Mexico, a region where he has a strong fan base, would be the perfect restart. For David Martinez, this is the monumental step up he has been seeking. The dynamic striker has been on a tear, assembling an impressive winning streak with highlight reel finishes that have made him one of the division's most talked about prospects. Facing a veteran and former title challenger of Vera's caliber is the ultimate legitimacy test. A victory here would be career-altering, instantly catapulting Martinez into the bantamweight top 10 and establishing him as a bona fide threat to the championship picture. Stylistically, the fight promises fireworks. Vera's iron chin, sneaky power, and opportunistic submissions will clash with Martinez's aggressive, technical striking and momentum. The addition of this bout solidifies the UFC Mexico card as a must-watch event, offering a pivotal matchup that will dramatically reshape the landscape of the bantamweight division.
Sean O'Malley's return to the octagon at UFC 324 is laden with a multifaceted pressure that transcends a typical contender's comeback. The former bantamweight champion, who hasn't tasted victory since March of last year after dropping 2 consecutive fights to Merab Dvalishvili, is at a critical career juncture where the outcome will dramatically alter his trajectory. A win over the formidable Song Yadong reopens the door to the championship picture, and specifically to the blockbuster rematch he craves with the newly crowned king Petr Yan, a fight O'Malley has labeled the biggest that can be made at 135 pounds, and one he envisions for the historic White House card. A loss, however, would cement a 3-fight skid, dangerously marginalizing him in a rapidly evolving division and casting doubt on his ability to re-enter the title conversation. Professionally, the stakes are about legacy and opportunity, but a new, deeply personal dimension has been added to O'Malley's preparation. For the first time in his fighting career, his 5-year-old daughter will be in the arena to watch him compete live. "My little princess is going to be there watching, and that's exciting," O'Malley shared, acknowledging that her presence introduces an emotional variable unlike any he's faced before. While he's performed for presidents and billionaires, the thought of his daughter's eyes on him changes the psychological calculus, adding a layer of paternal pride and desire to create a triumphant core memory for his child. O'Malley is also on a mission of stylistic reclamation. He has contextualized his recent losses as the product of a uniquely difficult, stylistically tough matchup against the relentless grappling of Dvalishvili, arguing it was an anomaly rather than a decline. "That guy's still here. That guy's showing up January 24, he asserted, referring to the highlight reel striker who rose to the title. The fight against Yadong, a dangerous and technical power puncher, represents a return to the pure stand-up battles where O'Malley built his fame. It's his first 3-round fight since 2022, offering a canvas to showcase the creative striking and fluid movement that made him a star, away from the suffocating wrestling pressure that stifled him. Thus, UFC 324 is a convergence point for multiple narratives.
narratives, the fighter seeking redemption from a skid, the contender eyeing a golden rematch, the artist returning to his preferred medium, and the father performing for his daughter's first show. Success means navigating all these pressures simultaneously to deliver a performance that proves the Sugar Show is not only back, but ready for its brightest spotlight yet.